Hi everyone, you are listening to She Leads with Carly. Our guest today is Sarah Franklin, the Executive Vice President and General Manager of Platform, Trailhead, and Developers at Salesforce. You'll soon hear a more extensive intro, but I absolutely love my chat with Sarah. We chat all about leadership, staying true to your authentic self, leaning into empathy that often comes naturally to women, and removing fear from our decision-making in order to pursue our passions. I really learned so much from this conversation, and I really hope you enjoy it. Hello, Sarah. Thank you so much for joining She Leads today. I'm so excited to get to know you and just hear your story. So really, thanks so much for coming on the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Carly. I'm very excited to be here.
Of course. So Sarah, you are the Executive Vice President and General Manager of Platform, Trailhead, and App Exchange at Salesforce. And really from witnessing the incredible inequality of women and minorities in STEM careers firsthand, you were inspired to help spark the Trailblazer movement by launching Trailhead, which is Salesforce's free online learning platform, which I'm excited to dive into more. And you've also worked at Salesforce for 12 years, which is incredible. But your career has spanned, large enterprises to scrappy startups as you specialize in bringing these emerging technologies and trends to the market, and you really have this unique blend of, technology and business expertise. As I've seen, it's quite evident from your career. And you also hold a dual degree in chemical engineering and biochemistry from Virginia Polytechnic Institute and State University. And I also just found out you also played field hockey there. And you currently serve on the board of directors for Big Brothers, Big Sisters of the Bay Area. So Sarah, it's such an honor. I'm excited to get to know you. So let's get started. Take me back to college, graduating with chemical engineering, biochemistry. At this point, what did you see your career as, or what did you imagine? How were you navigating your career? Questions you were asking yourself? Yeah, how did you go from there?
Yeah, no, it's a great question, and having to rewind back a longer time than I wish to think it was ago. But yeah, it was a really interesting time. This was in the late '90s when I had my degrees, and I, wanted to be a doctor and do stem cell research. That's why I got the dual degree, but turns out I was actually really bad at chemistry. But I loved math, and I loved in engineering. I had these classes which we took for intro to programming, which we learned Fortran.
Yeah.
And I really loved that problem solving, creative aspect to it, that you could think of something and build it. And I, got my first job actually in semiconductor manufacturing. But I was just bored. I was in a wafer lab and I wanted to get into tech, and I still don't know exactly what gave me the courage to do it, because I was just a young girl from Virginia. I knew nobody in California, and I just moved cross country, and I just worked as hard as I could to get a job in the tech space. And I just wanted to be a part of something that was always like new and interesting, and helping develop the world to be, more modern and innovative. So it was a long time ago, but it was really fun back then.
Yeah. So just initial question, I imagine even at that time, those going deep into engineering, it's heavily male dominated space. So even at that time, was there, hesitation or lack of confidence, like diving into that space in chemical engineering before even going on to tech?
Yeah, when I reflect back, even getting into engineering, the reason I was there was because my mother was a teacher. So she's a retired teacher of 30 plus years in elementary and gifted education. And, teachers, unfortunately, are not paid that much money. And she was a single mom when I was growing up. And so I remember just being like 16 years old in my guidance counselor's office. And I was like, I want to make more money than my mom did. And they said, what can I do? And they said, you can be an engineer. I was like, okay, I'm going to do that. But then when I went in and, in reflection, it's very interesting that I did look around and I was, the only woman in the program. And I was the only, woman then in tech. And it was very daunting. And it's in many ways because you don't feel included, you feel different. you don't feel that you can be what you can't see because you don't see other women around there.
Yeah.
And especially as you go through your career, and if you want to have children, it, limits your travel, limits your schedule. There's a lot of things that in a male dominated world, made it hard. And back then it wasn't, I was scared to talk about it, so it was a very different time. I mean, it's unfortunately still not equal, but that's where really having the courage to just be like, you know what, I'm going to do this no matter who's in the room, no matter who's at the table, I'm going to walk in there. And I did.
That's amazing. And even you mentioned like you were scared to talk about it. It's even like not having those people to look to, or, talk to those ones who, were mothers and also in this field, but really just like navigating your own way and being like, you know what, I'm here, I'm going to keep going with it. So that's incredible. So now walk me through really, deciding to leave Virginia, go to the West Coast in California. So at this point, like, what was going through your mind? Were your parents or your mom saying, you know what, like, Sarah, maybe just stay, let's be more safe? Or because it seemed like it was a big risk taking on this big move.
Yeah, it's funny, being from the East Coast, we endure hurricanes and tornadoes and all kinds of things like that, but really scary to my family was earthquakes. And so I remember my grandmother thinking California was going to fall off into the ocean. Yeah. And it's just very interesting, the difference of perspective. But yeah, and it's very interesting being raised in Virginia. I was raised, there's nothing a smile can't fix. Don't speak unless spoken to. Yeah. Don't say anything unless you have something nice to say. Was raised to be, more subservient and obedient and, quiet. And these are behaviors that also, do not benefit often women well in the workplace. Right. Because you're not trained how to say, hard things to people, how to give them feedback, which is constructive criticism. And so these are things that I had to learn over time, which was how to be direct and how to say something which might, somebody might not like to hear. Yeah. And this was one of the hardest things I think as being a woman, was that, men say things, strong and powerful, and they are leaders. Women say things and they're critical. And so this was something that was hard, really, coming from Virginia, especially coming to California. It was a place that was hard to break into. Yeah. I know you went to Stanford. I didn't catch if you were born and raised here or not, but it's, coming to California without knowing anybody, it was hard. Yeah. But, for women, I think that we have to just continue to lean into our strength, lean into, what we were raised to be, which is, I was raised to be compassionate and understanding and to listen and to be open-minded and to care. And I do think that those are great leadership traits that a lot of women have, which in the end, I think, benefit us.
Definitely. So Sarah, tell me, when you moved to California, did you learn this, the hard way, where you were experiencing firsthand and you were like, you know what, or was there a mentor who was helping you, saying like, Sarah, you got to speak up and you got to be direct and it's okay to be direct? Or was it just over time you were just gaining those skills? How did you learn that?
I think it's, trial and error and mentorship and, learn, just stepping back. And I'll say that, my career, as you mentioned, I've been big, small companies. I've had a lot of learnings along the way. I reflect back at how fortunate I was for a lot of male leaders that were very kind to me and, took me under their wing. And I learned a lot from people over time. But I will say the last 12 years, I really have grown up at Salesforce, and I'm so humbled and grateful for the learnings and leadership that I've learned from Mark Benioff and Parker Harris and Brett Taylor. and just incredible leaders at Salesforce. Also incredible. Those are some men leaders, but some incredible female leaders like Amy Weaver, who's our head of legal, Layla Secca, who used to be at the company, now she's doing venture.
Right.
Just people that were men and women that were advocates for women. It was very interesting because they started shining the light on. I remember Mark shined the light on equal pay. And I was like, wow, I didn't even think about that.
Yeah.
There's a lot that, again, when I reflect back, it was just the normal. It was like, yeah, I'm the only female. I'm the only one. It just was a thing.
Yeah.
And now you're like, oh my God, I was the only person. That was messed up,
Exactly.
And this is why I'm so proud that you're doing this show here right now, because we need women leaders as role models. I actually don't feel like I had that many that I, looked to, that I knew. You saw famous astronauts maybe on television or something like that, but to actually know somebody, I didn't really know female leaders.
Yeah.
And I think that this show and so much now, like it's very important that you do know female leaders that you can talk to, that you can ask questions of, because otherwise it feels very, very lonely if you're the only woman in the room.
Yeah, definitely. I agree. And I think it's important, even, women of all industries in Broadway, like for instance, one's coming out today in Broadway and everything. So just to show that, there are female leaders in every path that you can take. So okay, before we go to Salesforce, tell me now, I know you had this shift in, from like heavy engineering roles to now kind of dabbling in business and marketing roles. So when did that transition happen? And did you always see that? Were you always kind of like, okay, I want to experience more of the business side of things?
So one of the things that I've always, aspired to be is open-minded and to be relevant and learning new things.
Right.
And it's I think something that is important to never let yourself really get dated. Like I tell people that I mentor, when you go to a meeting, or if you go or show up on a Zoom these days,
yeah.
You want to walk in and you want people to feel like the future has arrived, that you come in with big ideas, that you understand the newest technologies, and that you are a big thinker, and that you are, on a mission to make an impact.
Yeah.
And that's like the vibe that you want people to feel when you come around, because they're like, oh wow, like I want to be with that person, and I want to work with that person. And so it was really important for me to always be doing that. And so yes, I got into tech. I started engineering. I did some coding. I was an ABAPer. I did integration work, and I was just always like trying to do like the next thing. We did the first XML over HTTP connector to replace EDI bands and a bunch of stuff. And it was like, what's next? What's next?
Yeah.
And then I learned like, oh, I could actually apply not just technical skills to solving technical problems, but also to looking at the business and looking at how you do marketing and messaging and all these other aspects. And it was really fun. That was something that I really love about dancing on both sides of the coin of the technology and the business, is that you get to have a lot of fun and you get to evangelize and talk about what you're doing. The same way as a mom, I love talking about my kids. I love to get people excited about the technologies that we're building and how they can help the world or change the world or make new business models. Yeah. And that was kind of what for me was just to always be exploring and to dabbing my toe into things and to recognizing if there are things that I wasn't good at. Like I mentioned earlier, I wanted to get a doctor, degree or medical degree and do stem cell research, but I just wasn't that good at it. And so that was a thing, to be open-minded, to always be trying new things, but then to find what you're good at and the things that you're not good at, to surround yourself with people that are great at it.
Right.
But that's how I made the transition. Was I didn't say no, and I just kept learning and exploring. And then these opportunities found me. And it turns out if you can dance this line of knowing the business and the technology, it really is a powerful combination in market. And it's something that I do think is rare because people get into like one swim lane often.
Yeah. Sarah, so many lessons in that one answer that is, so valuable. Because like you said at the end, like so many people, just say, okay, I'm a software engineer. I can code and I don't know the business side versus, I'm not going to try coding because I'm a good marketer. I'm good in sales. So I think what you said, it's so valuable and it's powerful to have these like both mindsets almost. You can really like read what the engineer is thinking as well as what the marketer or whoever on the business side. So I love that.
Yeah, it gives you some empathy. Like I will share. It's funny. I reflect when I was a developer. I remember like we met with marketing about something, and they put up some slides that had like 10 words on the page.
Yeah.
And some of them had maybe 3, and I was like, oh my god! Like I was up all night for the last 2 months, or 2 weeks, like working on this project. Like we shipped it, code freeze, we're done, excited. Like all I had to do was write 3 words on a slide. I was like, really, how hard is that to do? Come on, And then you go into marketing and you realize like, oh my God, it's really hard to choose the 3 words that go on a slide. All I can do is 3 words. And everybody's got all this input. Everybody has an opinion. Everybody has a different way of saying something. And you're just like, oh my gosh, I super empathize with that person now that has to do that. And marketing is very subjective, where coding is very literal. Like your code compiles or it doesn't, right? Marketing, I don't know. People might like it. They might not.
Right.
And so I think it was also really good to tour through different areas of business because you learn empathy for everybody and you learn what's hard. And I think, again, as females, especially, I might not have been raised to be authoritarian, but I was raised to be empathetic. And, so I believe that's a value that can lean into. And as women, I think actually, especially now, leading with empathy is a superpower.
Yeah.
And people want to feel listened to. They want to feel heard. You may not know the answers. You may not agree. But if you are empathetic, people will be inspired by your leadership. Yeah. And that's been something I've learned over time as well.
I love it. And it's funny you mentioned the empathy side because it's obviously very, very clear in this regard. But I did a case study actually of my summer internship. As a non-engineer, I noticed in a small startup how it's very different, what motivates an engineer versus a non-engineer. Like you go into brainstorming meetings, so excited for all these new things that's going to happen. And then the engineer is like, hold up, like that's a lot, and so it's really interesting.
That's a lot of work.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so before we get to Trailhead and what you did with Trailhead, let's take me to, how did you find Salesforce and what attracted you to it? And then also, there's a clear trajectory of your growth at Salesforce. So I'm interested to really hear about, how did you know that, because right now it's not common to stay at a company for, longer than, 3-5 years or so. So tell me, what made you stay versus say, okay, it's time for me to, move on and go to somewhere else.
Yeah, and there's a part of my story you might not even know. But so, yeah, I came to Salesforce. I got a cold call from a guy named Eric Stahl, who's a dear friend of mine. I didn't know him at the time, but now he's a dear friend. And I had written a blog post at a small startup I was at that talked about comparing software to pecan pie. And I think, again, that's another thing is I've always believed in being different, just not being different to be different, but just being yourself and not being afraid if that's different. It's something that over time I learned to lean into your true authentic self, and people are attracted to that. So he reached out and he's like, hey, there's this company at the time I was doing integration work, on premises. He's like, yeah, we're looking to do all this like stuff in the cloud. It's this magic place, and I was like, that sounds incredible. Sign me up. Yeah. And, that brought me to Salesforce, and we launched our platform, which was basically all of the work I had been doing in the past with integration and coding made easy in the cloud. Mm-hmm. And I saw huge benefits there. And I saw incredible people doing incredible things with our technology. And it was so powerful to tell the stories of these people from all walks of life that didn't have computer science degrees, that weren't engineers by schooling, that were able to do the same things could do, you know, in a matter of days. Right. And that's what the cloud like afforded them. And so, you know, putting on the marketing skills, you know, promoted those stories, told those stories. And then, you know, it was so exciting, and that's why you stay, because it was just growing. It was a rocket ship, and it was incredible the amount of stories that we're saying. But I will say, I was very focused at the time on my career, and I shared early, you know, my career choice. I wanted to make more money than my mom. Yeah. I wanted to get promoted. I was just very focused on me. And I was like, my career, me. What can I do? Yeah. And I actually hit a time at Salesforce where I was struggling to get promoted, and I actually left Salesforce. I followed my then boss to AWS. He became the CMO of Amazon Web Services, which was then also this new thing that people hadn't heard of yet. And I was there for about 6 months, and then I serendipitously came back on what we call a boomerang here at Salesforce. Yeah. And when I came back to Salesforce, it was when I really started leaning into that passion of celebrating what people were doing with our platform. And we realized that we had so many people that we needed to skill them up at scale. And our team, that's where the idea of Trailhead came from. Yeah. And the idea of celebrating people and celebrating them so people could be what they can see, whether you are a woman, whether you were in a different no matter what language you spoke, no matter what race you were, no matter what age you were, no matter your gender, no matter your sexual orientation, no matter your socioeconomic situation, no matter your academic background, didn't matter who you were, you could find somebody in the community that we were celebrating, so you could be what you could see. You know, you could be an Uber driver and become a developer. You could become a cashier and become an engineer. Like, you could do all these things. And that, I am getting back to your question, but that's when career success found me, was when I leaned into that passion, and I just couldn't sleep. People know me. I wake up at 4 a.m. and I am gone, because it's so passionate. I'm so passionate about telling these stories and empowering these people to do these incredible things. And, you know, fast forward, that's how you get 12 years at somewhere, is where you continuously just building dreams and just, that is what you're doing. Amazing. And that is what has been so incredible about being here at Salesforce and with the Trailhead and our platform.
Yeah. So incredible. And you could tell the passion. It comes through the screen, which I love. So tell me now about Trailhead. So you told me, you know, that's the inspiration, the passion, but tell me, like, in the moment, you know, you had this idea. How did you make it from idea to reality and make it, okay, you know what, this is something that Salesforce can do, and it could be huge, it could be impactful. So what was going through your mind at this stage?
So what was incredible with Trailhead is that I was so fortunate to be with just incredible people, that had incredible ideas. Like, so, because Trailhead was a culmination of a few things. Like, one, we had one of our developer evangelists that was really into gaming, and he's like, you know, I just love when I play my game and I get my trophies. You know, I love those. That makes me feel really addicted, like getting these points and getting these trophies, and that's like the badges that you're on with Trailhead. Yeah. And then you have people that were saying, like, you know what, I just hate it when I go to technology sites or read manuals, and it's all this like gobbledygook jargon and acronyms, and I don't know what it means, and it's so boring, right? And you're like, why does it have to be so boring? Right. You know, enterprise software can be fun. Like, we can talk about things in regular tone. We can have a little bit of, you know, humor in it as well. And that was the tone and voice of Trailhead that like the team brought in. And then, you know, from our user experience. And so you just like, what happened with Trailhead was this magical creation that came from, you know, ideas from here and there. And nobody knew at the time what was happening. It was like, oh, we just want to like, teach people like this Salesforce stuff. And then all of a sudden it just like, we kept breaking dashboards and it just kept, more and more people were learning. And then we realized also that there are so many trends that are, whether it's from, systemic racism or unconscious bias, or the horrible ratios we have in tech for underrepresented minorities, or if you look at higher ed, how expensive it's becoming and how it's continuing to pander to like the elite 1% that can afford, such, expensive education. And also then people that are getting education are often not getting degrees that lead to jobs. And so they're just becoming, burdened with incredible amounts of student debt and degrees that, won't put food on the table for their families. And just as a passionate group, again, we lean into that passion of like, okay, we want to help people like earn skills that lead to jobs. We want to bring the people to the jobs. Like there's a lot of jobs and there's a lot of people. Just like, let's help the people learn the skills that the jobs are needing. And it's a simple problem. Like when you reduce it down to that, but that's basically what we did. And we're still doing it. There's still so much work to be done.
And so, in these early stages, was there ever, was there a fear or, some hesitation that you can start it? Or, like what position were you at Salesforce to really have that power to start it? Or, like take me through that. Was there any risks involved, or was it purely just like, this is so exciting, we're going to make it, this is going to be huge and everything? How was it? Yeah.
We didn't know it was going to be huge. I mean, that's a thing. Like, I think when you get something and you do it, like you don't do something thinking like, oh, okay, this is gonna, this is gonna be, this other, this incredible thing. Like you start it, and that seems so. I mean, even like 6 years ago, it's crazy. You can't imagine that it would have gotten to this place. And every year we're like, oh my God, if we could only get here, and then you not only get there, like you double your way past it. So it's kind of crazy how you can't imagine it, and then you look back and you're like, oh my God, how did I not imagine that it would be this great, or this important, or this impactful? And so at Salesforce, what we did was again, feel very blessed for our leadership with Mark Benioff, who really champions innovation, and he really he got wind of what we were doing, and he was a huge advocate. It's interesting. There's a story, you talk about fear. There was this moment when we were pitching Mark on, what we were doing, and we're going to make like a developer conference, and we were talking about the names of the people that we celebrate. And I told him that we called them Trailblazers. And I remember that meeting. He actually wrote about this in his book. He kind of like was like, I don't know, that's kind of a weird name. And he like dismissed it. And then that night, I went home and I really believed in the idea, and I was having a little bit of a sleepless night, and I got out my phone and I typed this kind of ad hoc manifesto of what it was to be a trailblazer, to be somebody that stood for equality, and that's to be somebody that was passionate about learning and that was helping their community and bettering the world, and that we were building this like movement, right, of trailblazers. And I typed it out pretty quickly, and I stared at my phone for probably like 45 minutes. In the middle of the night, it was like my Jerry Maguire moment where I was sitting there like, oh my God, if I send this, am I going to get fired? Right? It's basically this, manifesto thing to, Mark Benioff. And this is where, like, you ask, what did I do? I was like, you know what? That's the worst that'll happen is, he'll say no, I'll get fired, or, and but the worst thing that could ever happen was I didn't try.
Exactly.
And so I hit send, and then I started to really freak out, because who knows what he was going to think. And the next morning he wrote back, approved, aloha mark. And those 3 words like just really changed the directory and the course of Trailhead, because the whole company pivoted behind it. They were, united behind its mission. And, Trailblazer is now like a big thing in Salesforce history, along with our characters, along with our vibe, along with our tone and voice. And I guess that would be my closing thing, would just be to like, if you ever, when you're trying to make a decision, and if fear is something that's holding you back or is a factor, ask yourself, what are those fears? And can you conquer them in the moment right there? And you'll be amazed at what happens, because when you can take fear out of your decision making and just really lean into your passion and purpose and what you believe in, that has been, for me, what has helped me find success. Wow. And that's been what I see people in my professional world. When you get rid of their fears, like their fear of thinking that they can't do it, their fear of failure, their fear of looking stupid, their fear of being wrong, right, their fear of, losing. When they let go of those fears, they usually find incredible things. Wow. And that's what I think as women, a lot of times we have to ask ourselves, like, what am I afraid of? And then conquer that fear in the moment.
Yes. Oh, Sarah, I think that is so valuable. And even in that story is great, by the way. I love that story. And you mentioned, what's the worst case that could happen? Like, yes, getting fired, that is something, but it's also like having that mentality to know, like, at least I tried. Because I think it would be worse, staying in this space, not knowing you tried. And then, so I love that. And everything about fear is, so incredible. So I think that's a good segue to, our fun questions at the end. So tell me,
I like fun.
Yes. So first, what's a passion you have that's, outside of your work, completely unrelated to Salesforce and all of that? Tell me another passion you have.
So I love running. I love the outdoors. Nice. I love running. I'm also infatuated with space travel and with Mars. I would just go bananas if we could have a human on Mars in my lifetime.
Incredible.
It's something that I'm super fascinated with.
So before I go into the last question, so tell me, you're big on really discovering these emerging technologies, like you said, like space tourism, for instance. So what do you use, or what do you read, or what are your resources to really uncover more about emerging technologies and discover more about, the future of tech or whatever it may be? What do you do?
This is pretty non-scientific, actually. As of late, I've been using a lot with my 16-year-old daughter, and it's really I love how our youth keep us young. Yeah. And listening to her talk and listening to her ideas. I remember one day she was frustrated about her homework, her history lesson, and this was pre-COVID. Yeah. And we were arguing, and I was like, "You have to do your history," and she's like, "Why do I have to learn about a bunch of like dates that like dead presidents died?" She's like, "How is this ever going to be useful to me ever?" And I was like, I didn't have a good answer, but I was like, she was just arguing with me. And then she said something super insightful. She was like, "Mom, we have these huge problems with, climate change right now. Like, why is not my school not teaching me what I need to do and what every single one of our, if every 15-year-old learned what they needed to do to impact climate change, like, just think what that could mean for the world." And I was like, wow, that's a really big idea. And, climate change is also something at Salesforce we've been advocates for. And so I love listening to, people that are not, because I'm old now. I just turned 45. And, you get stuck in your ways. You get myopic. You think like, oh, well, I tried that before. It didn't work. And I don't know if you've seen the movie like General Magic, like, you know, they like tried to make a kind of an iPhone, it didn't work, but then Steve Jobs did it and it did work. You know, it's just about, you know, timing a lot of things. And so staying open-minded, talking to the youth, just observing with an open mind and asking questions. Ask questions like why and how and why not. Those are just by having that inquisitive mindset. It's not a scientific approach or not a blog to follow or a podcast to listen to, but I think having that mindset is the most important thing to keep yourself abreast of new technologies.
Yeah, I love it. And I even like talking to people who are so outside of, you know, like they're not inside that world. So like
opening your aperture. Exactly. Yeah, perfect.
Yeah. So, okay, the final question is, what is a fun or weird talent that you have that no one really knows about? So almost a hidden talent. And so, Sarah, I'm going to go first. So what I do is I throw blueberries into my mouth. Okay, and I catch blueberries. So
oh my God, I want to see this. Okay.
So here we go. All right, here's blueberry. Okay. Oh, there we go.
Oh my God, that's incredible.
It's become my signature end of the episode talent.
That is awesome. I love that. I if I tried that, I would have blueberries all over and make a mess. For me, I don't think many people know this, but for it was 12 or 13 years, I twirled baton. Ooh. So I don't have a baton with me right now, but I'm often like, I don't know, here's a pen. I don't know, it's not really the same, but like I often like, you know, twiddle, like, I'm really good with like, I can do all the twirling with batons, and that's, I love that. I wish I had one here. I would do it for you, but that's kind of a weird thing that people don't know about me.
I love that. That's a great one. I also honestly, I envy those people who can just like go like that with their pen. I've been trying.
Oh,
but I can't get it down.
All you have to do is just put your mind to it, and you can learn how to do it. It's actually pretty easy. You like to do like the spinny thing too. Like you can do the spinny thing. I don't know. I need a better pen.
It's so natural for you. It's like part of your hand. I love that. That's nice.
Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah, very cool. Okay, well, Sarah, this has been so fun. Thank you so much for coming on She Leads. It's really, you've taught me so much, and I'm just excited for others to learn from you, get inspired by you and everything. So really, thank you so much.
Thank you, Carly, and the same. Have a wonderful day. Stay safe.